All right, thanks so much, Paul, for that. It's 6:43. Time now. We're talking top issues with Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones.
Yes, she joins us live now for our weekly segment. Okay, early voting kicks off today. You going to vote today? And let me ask you this. But how do you feel about it? Where do you think he goes?
Well, I think, as I shared in the op-ed that folks hopefully had a chance to look at over the weekend, the San Antonio Express News, there's lots for me that go into kind of this big generational investment, right? Obviously, the economy is always top of mind as we are looking at the impact, the implementation of the reconciliation bill. Again, cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP, right? We are continuing to see the impacts of immigration, tariff, and inflation, those things that drive up costs. So those are all the things that are kind of top of mind for me as I think about this big investment. But as I shared, look, I think if Proposition B passes, there's still key elements of that we need to negotiate to make sure, as I call them, ironclad agreements, right, with the Spurs to make sure that everything kind of follows as described. And if Proposition B fails, and if the Spurs wish to continue negotiating, then we can certainly continue doing that. There's nothing saying that we can't do that. So I certainly hope folks make a plan to vote. They've got until next Friday to early vote, so please make sure to do that.
And City Council's Governance Committee held their first meeting last week. What kind of work does that committee plan on doing for the city?
Yeah, I think so. The Governance Committee met, and a lot of that were some kind of backlogged ideas, frankly, that did not get passed in the previous administration, but I'm thankful that some of those now are moving forward. What was, I think, most critical last week is the fact that we had our first discussion about a tabletop. I know we've got lots of veterans that are watching this morning, and so at the Pentagon, we'd call these kind of war games, right? But these tabletops, what they do, they help us kind of think through those big challenges that we've got. Hey, what are we missing? What are we assuming? And so the reason I asked the staff to help put that on is because, again, with the implementation of these federal cuts, not only for people's pocketbooks, Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP, Social Security, but also our city budget, about $153 million every year comes into our city budget from federal funds. A lot of that goes toward public health. Much of that also goes toward the airport. And so I wanted our folks to understand, hey, as we're seeing some of this uncertainty, I mean, we're talking this morning and we still are during a federal shutdown, right? So the economy is very uncertain. So if we see some of those cuts at the federal level and then we begin to see in our community people suffering more, I mean, you all just read last week the cuts to the Meals on Wheels program in our community, right? Our community is the third most impoverished city in the country. And so while we might not have all the answers, the intent of the tabletop that we'll have in a couple of weeks is to help us reduce the uncertainty. How can we help ourselves? How can we best work with our partners, many of which themselves may be impacted by these federal cuts? And then most certainly, how do we work with the county? I want
to talk about the Army North and South thing, them moving. Now, it's got a lot of people, I'm sure, thinking back, BRAC, when the whole BRAC thing happened. Do you have any idea how many jobs we're looking at losing with those two commands moving?
So the announcement is in line with what they shared with myself and several city members when we were there this summer, which is they are looking to identify some efficiencies. And so, I mean, frankly, I was not super surprised that the headquarters themselves, that doesn't mean the entire entity, that means just the headquarters is going to North Carolina. That just, oh, by the way, happens to be where the Secretary of the Army is from, right? And so nothing is happening overnight. And again, as they look to find efficiencies, the movement of those two headquarters going to North Carolina, there will still be a large footprint here. I was actually engaging both with members on the House side and on the Senate side, our federal delegation, helping to get some clarity. And it's been interesting. It's been a little bit hard for them themselves to get some information just because of the shutdown. But I think, as one of the Senate folks shared with me, the Army, the footprint here at Joint Base San Antonio will be strong. Right. And I think what's also really important is again, having come from this world, there's a lot of civilian expertise that goes to helping our military. And much of that, as we understand now, will stay here. And I mean, by most accounts, it's like 3 civilians to 1 uniformed person. And that expertise staying here, I think, is really important. That's what we know now. Again, obviously, we'll continue to work to make sure that we are competitive for the things that we have. But again, I also, when I went up there this past summer, I laid out for them a list of things things that we'd really like them to consider hosting here in San Antonio, because we are ripe for it, and they're related to some of the missions that we've got. So we'll continue having those discussions with folks, because again, San Antonio is unmatched in our ability to support missions and military families.
Hey, and last week, we learned sadly Jose Flores, a student from your alma mater at John Jay, died weeks after being hit by a car. I know you said you want to make some big changes to help protect walkers and people who commute. What are some of those changes that you're wanting to make?
Yeah, and I was speaking with the principal, texting over the weekend, and he was laid to rest this weekend. And so certainly my heart goes out to that family, and every kid, every person should feel safe in our community when they're certainly walking to school or just kind of walking in their neighborhoods. And so I know the interim director of Public Works, Juan Ayala, is going to, in that particular area, going to do kind of a safety review of what more needs to be done there. Anybody that knows that area knows that Marbach it can get pretty fast, and some folks are not necessarily paying attention. So I'm thankful he's going to do that as we look at other ways to keep our community members safe.
Unfortunately, this time always goes quick. We're out of time.
Okay.
Mayor, thanks for coming in
All
this
right.
morning.
Yeah, thanks for being here.